Higher Education Finance and Policy Committee for Thursday, March 4th, 2021 will come to order. We have an agenda of 3 bills today, and to try and accommodate authors, we are starting a little bit early. So Senator Draheim, you go ahead with Senate File 42. That one we will be laying over for possible inclusion. So Senator Draheim, please present your bill.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for making time for me. I do have another bill up at 1 o'clock, so I apologize to members.
You don't have to apologize. This is an accommodating chair in the Higher Education Committee, trying to make life simple for the members of the committee. So you go right ahead now.
I appreciate that. I do have an E1 technical amendment that I would like to move.
Do we have the A1 amendment? Okay, and this is putting the bill in the form that you would like it to be in. Is that correct?
Correct, Chair.
Okay, so
Mr. Chair, I'd move that A1 amendment.
Senator Jasinski moves the A1 amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion is adopted. Senator Draheim.
Thank you, and thank you, members, for your time. This is a bill that I kind of rehashed from a few years ago. Senator Clausen probably recognizes it. We do various bills to help out different parts of the state, and one thing that we've done in the past are large animal veterinarian programs to encourage people to go through a veterinarian program to go out in the rural areas where it's been harder and harder to get people to go. Same thing with doctors. This one goes after mental health. And, what can we do to help out those rural communities away from a metropolitan statistical area or a bigger city where a lot of people like to live, so go out in the country. So this bill states you have to live 15 miles from one of these metropolitan statistical areas, which does exclude quite a few areas, including some of my district. But I'm okay with that because it's the right thing to do for people farther out. So this creates a loan forgiveness program for mental health professionals in underserved rural areas. This would include therapists, counselors, clinical social workers, psychologists, etc. So it's pretty straightforward, Chair, if you want me to stop there. Otherwise, I just have a little bit more.
Go ahead and finish what you have to say.
Okay. So to qualify, you have to be one of the professionals I just mentioned. You have to attend a Minnesota institution, agree to work in an area that is underserved, be a Minnesota resident, have qualifying loans. So you have to have education loans out there because this is a forgiveness program, and not be participating in a MDH loan repayment program. You have to submit an application, obviously, and then you have to work 5 years in the mental health field in these underserved rural areas. So if you do all that, the office will be giving awards out for $7,000 or whatever balance they have, whatever's less, if they do it for 5 years. It's pretty straightforward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? I know Senator Clausen, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as Senator Draheim said, I'm familiar with this bill. It's a good bill, no question about it. It'll really help some people. I just have a question that in the past when we've had this bill, it's been under the Department of Health. And we've had testimony in this committee earlier about kind of removing what I would call these carve-out programs, the large animal veterinarian program, the brain study program. So some of these, and I'm just wondering if it would be better served as we're removing some of these programs from the higher education budget to look at it in the Department of Health where similar bills have previously been funded.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator Clausen, for the question. I think it's an important program. I personally, I don't care where it fits into the ecosystem. But I think it is important for us, and no matter what committee we're on, to help promote areas that we're missing people, missing workers in. So in this case, mental health counselors are in dire need. So anything we can do to help with that, this is a very small dollar amount to help people enter that field. I personally think it would be better administered in Office of Higher Education than MDH. That's why I put it there, because they do similar programs. So that's why it's included here.
And from the standpoint of it's a loan forgiveness for college education, maybe OHE is the right place, but I think we can have that discussion as we move through the process. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks for Senator Draheim for bringing this bill. I think it's a great bill. I spent 4 years in the bonding committee, and when we do those tours, it's one of the biggest things we hear is mental health in those rural areas that don't have them. So we hear that a lot. So I think it's a great bill. And I like the kind of what I would call the rails that are on there, the requirements, the 5-year and things like that. I think it really makes some rails on there that really make it good. The only thing that I forgot is he forgot to mention his co-authors. That was it. Other than that, I really approve of the bill.
And Senator Jasinski, there's no requirement that the author of the bill mention the co-authors, but since you're one of them and I'm one of them, we should probably mention them now. So, but
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Let's add into the fact that there's a letter of support in your packet, everybody from Sue Abnerholden of NAMI and supporting this, and this is very similar to some of the programs we've done in rural Minnesota, as Senator Draheim mentioned earlier, regarding doctors and dentists, and they are very successful programs. And if we need to get professionals in that area, and this works, this is a good tool to do it. So, any other questions or comments from the committee? Okay, seeing none, Senator Draheim, you can take off. We are going to lay Senate file number 42 as amended over. We're going to lay it over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. And if you do hear from HHS that they want it there, we can eventually move it out and get it over there. And if there's no desire to do that, then we'll try and put it in the omnibus bill. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I was going to close with thanking my co-authors, but since you two already thanked yourself.
Well, there's a couple more there, so you can mention it.
Okay, so we have obviously Senator Jasinski and Thomasoni, Howe, and then Chamberlain. So thank you, co-authors, and thanks for your time, members.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, so we'll move on now to the second bill on the agenda, Senate File 1418, Senator Housley, the Spinal Cord Injury and Traumatic Brain Injury Research Grant Program Establishment. So, Senator Housley, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like how on time you guys are. This is good. This is good, good.
We don't monkey around on higher ed.
No, you don't. And Draheim can get off and chair his committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you is Senate File 1418. This bill will move the Spinal Cord Injury and Traumatic Brain Injury Research Grant Program from OHE to DHS. The program was established in 2015 to provide grants to institutions for research into spinal cord injuries and traumatic brain injuries. Unfortunately, the governor's budget proposal included eliminating the funding and repealing this very, very successful program. So this will state that the program he stated that the program was misaligned with OHE's mission, and that OHE does not have relevant expertise to oversee a medical research program. So this would be moving it over to DHS. I forgot to, I had a letter of support from the Jack Jablonski Foundation and from Jack himself. So if I could just read it quickly, because I forgot to send it. So this is from Jack. He said, a spinal cord injury no longer needs to be a lifelong sentence of paralysis. In 2017, with funding from private donors, Mayo Clinic became the first medical center in the world to validate paralysis recovery results using a spinal neuromodulation treatment. The first patient that clinical trial walked independently over more than 100 yards. Now we need to get that treatment to everyone living with paralysis. Mayo Clinic started the next phase of that process last year. Half of the funding for this next phase of the research came directly from this research grant program. And the other half came from private donors supporting the foundation, including the Jack Jablonski Foundation. This is a very, very successful public-private partnership, achieving something neither partner could have done alone, and together we can get this done. Challenging times require tough budgeting decisions, but there's a big difference between cutting the budget and cutting paralysis recovery entirely from the state's priorities. For Minnesota to remain a world leader, and you'll hear from some people not just from Minnesota today, in this field of research, we need the state to remain a part of the paralysis recovery solution. Thanks for hearing the Jack Jablonski letter. So I'm going to just turn it right over to the testifiers because they've got some good stories too. So thank you again, Mr. Chair and members, for hearing the bill.
Senator Housley, you maybe should tell people who Jack Jablonski is, even though I know, and you know, but maybe some other people should hear it because he's been very active in this since he was injured. So why don't you give everybody a little.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Jack Jablonski was a young high school hockey player for Edina that got into an accident on the ice and ended up paralyzed. And he has worked so hard to gain awareness for spinal injury recovery, and started his own foundation. And now he's working for the Los Angeles Kings, and is just a great kid. But yeah, it's the Jack Jablonski Foundation is all from Jack and his injury as a hockey player in high school.
And he's actually making progress, I think.
He's definitely making progress. And I think one of our testifiers is going to talk about the success stories. And again, the success story that came from this research money that came right here from Minnesota. So we absolutely cannot cut it. And as a matter of fact, this bill, there previously was just $3 million in the bill, and with that was in the program. We've raised it to $5 million because I think programs that have success like this one has should continue to be funded and given more if they're doing good things with it.
Okay, members, we have 5 testifiers, so what we'll do here is let them all testify, and then if there's questions or comments from the committee, we will allow you to interject when you feel like it. But let's start out with Isabel. And just say your name for the record, and then go ahead with your testimony.
Yes, my name is Isabel Scarisbrick, and thank you so much, Chair and Senator Housley, for recognizing the great importance of the spinal cord injury and traumatic brain injury research in the state, and for the opportunity to address all of you. You know, as an educator and research scientist, I'm here really to lend my support to the Minnesota State SCI and TBI program that's currently housed in the Office of Higher Education. I can't tell you how much, it was just articulated as well, this program's been tremendously successful, and it's really brought together the SCI and TBI community, their families and researchers, really to further education and the development of new therapies for these devastating conditions. As a researcher and former grant recipient, I can highlight the great need for this type of pilot research funding that is provided by this grant mechanism. And each of these projects seek to find new treatments and indeed cures for neural injuries, which are both understudied and underfunded medical conditions with really high healthcare and emotional costs. In this regard, the program has met with outstanding success, as you just heard from Senator Housley, funding new projects and collaborations across numerous Minnesota state educational institutions, small businesses, and healthcare organizations. These projects have really resulted in significant advances towards restoring function and quality of life. And more than that, even, they've put Minnesota on the map as a national and internationally recognized region of excellence in these areas of education and research. Just want to take a minute to speak as an educator. A very important part of the current program that I really want to highlight is the powerful impact that this has had on students at all educational levels. this is really an often underappreciated and overlooked part of this highly valuable Office of Higher Education initiative. I serve as the Graduate Program Education Director for Regenerative Sciences at Mayo Clinic, and I've seen firsthand how this program has advanced not only student practical skills in research, but really the awareness of the critical need for research in these areas while educating the research community about the issues that are most important to this community. As a former advisory council member for this program, I've really witnessed its incredible reach, facilitating learners at all levels. And this really goes from high school students, undergraduates, medical students, medical residents. And in my own laboratory, this program has directly impacted numerous students. And not only in their education, but then all these students go on to disseminate these research findings through presentations and lectures at regional and national meetings. And so with this advisory council in place, it's comprised not only of professionals that deliver healthcare to the SCI and TBI community and scientists, but also individuals and their families who are affected by these devastating conditions. Therefore, the program is truly driven by community needs, not just institutions. And I think this makes it really unique and why it's really flourished in the Office of Higher Education. I just wanted to point out too that part of the initiative is to have a biannual symposium that brings together members of the spinal cord and traumatic brain injury community, their families and scientists. And it's really this forum which really stimulates new ideas and pushes the field forward. So I just wanted to thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to provide some additional information. Thank you.
I appreciate your testimony, and I noticed one of the things you said was national and international effect on the programs coming right out of Minnesota. And I'm assuming all the members of the committee have received emails from people from all over the state, as well as nearby states and all over the country. And one of the emails I received came from New York. And I don't believe in my legislative career that I've ever received an email from New York. So I decided to respond to it. And so we have one of our testifiers is Tammy Parker Song. And Tammy wrote back to me and said that she's never received a response from a legislator before. So at that point, I decided, well, you know, with Zoom and everything, maybe we should just have her testify. So our next testifier is from New York. And Tammy, please go ahead and start your testimony start out by saying your name so you can identify yourself for the record.
Hi, I'm Tammy Parker Song. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for inviting me, Senator. It's nice to meet all of you virtually. So I just wrote up a thing that I'll read. The other day, I was walking through my neighborhood. I live in Manhattan. I noticed a man in a wheelchair with a little black puppy. It was a small and curious puppy with no self-preservation instincts to stay out of the way of the wheelchair. The whole thing was cute, and it made me realize it was the first time I'd seen a wheelchair in a while, which reminded me of when I became aware of how rarely I see wheelchairs here in New York. 3.5 years ago, my best friend Lori's husband, Jason, who you'll see here today, was in a really bad truck accident and became paralyzed from the waist down. A few years after that, they and their 3 kids visited me here in Manhattan. We trucked all over New York, walking and wheeling and taking the subway. Or we tried to take the subway. What actually happened was that we took all sorts of detours through dense crowds of people underneath the World Trade Center, through Times Square, just trying to find subway stations that Jason could actually get into in his wheelchair. And because they are intrepid adventurers with lots of stamina, we managed to see New York. But what we all noticed was that there were almost no other wheelchairs anywhere that we went. I hadn't considered until then that in this city of 8.4 million people, I honestly almost never see a wheelchair. Not in the subway stations, not in the grocery stores, or the many public parks. According to the World Health Organization, 1% of the world's population needs a wheelchair. So that's like 80,000 people in New York. And my question became, where are they? The thing about paraplegics and quadriplegics, the recipients of the research up for discussion today, is that they are mostly inside of buildings, outside of our sight and outside of our attention. It's really hard to imagine someone else's pain. How do we turn our attention and care to people who are invisible to us? There are a lot of things that I had no idea about until Jason experienced paraplegia. I did not understand that not being able to walk is actually the least of the problems for folks with spinal cord injuries. Losing bone density, for example, is something that you just wouldn't think about. To keep their strength and density, our bones need weight-bearing exercise. When bones lose density, they are easily broken. Or pressure sores, which I'd never thought about. Folks who experience paralysis don't get the signals the rest of us do to shift our bodies around regularly, which is necessary to avoid pressure sores. And pressure sores are really bad news. Christopher Reeve died from the infection caused by a pressure sore. I'm just picking two things, bone density and pressure sores, and I could pick so many other things, all of them subsumed under the jargon secondary complications. Considering the gritty suffering subsumed under secondary complications is quite the thing. The state of Minnesota is known all over the United States as a leader in spinal cord injury research. Other states have modeled their spinal cord injury research on Minnesota's. In spinal cord research, researchers and innovators are closer and closer to breakthroughs that could change the source of those secondary complications that are causing so much suffering many of us don't see, but is so real inside the brick and stone buildings we walk past. I'm here from New York to testify in front of you because Minnesota's spinal cord research matters all over the country and all over the world. I know there's so much human suffering that science is trying to cure or at least mitigate, but on this particular day, you have the chance to continue giving money to a program that has done so much good. Please don't stop giving that money. It's tried and true. I know we don't usually see the people it's helping, but this money can help us reach through the walls of the buildings toward our friends and family and community members with spinal cord injuries and bring them back out among us. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your testimony. And Jason, you are the person that Tammy pointed out to me that would also like to testify because you have actually been a person who's been affected by spinal cord injury. And so, Jason, go ahead and just say your name for the record and go ahead with your testimony.
Okay. My name is Jason Stouffer, and thank you, Senator Tomassoni, for the invite here, and Senator Housley for presenting the discussion today. And Tammy, thanks. Thanks for that. I got actually a little emotional hearing you talk. But you guys might be wondering why this guy from Montana is here talking to you about legislation that's happening in Minnesota. Tammy hit on it, but it really comes back to this point that what you guys are doing there is so crucial. It's so crucial to the rest of the country. I'm just going to tell you guys a brief story because we have a lot of folks testifying, and I'll keep it short. But just so that you can put a face with a story of what spinal cord injury is, so that I can kind of move it along as well. I also just wrote something down. So the thing that I really want you to know first off and clearly is I don't want to be here today. Like, I don't want to be this guy that has this experience to have to relay to you, but I'm compelled to, and I'm obligated. And so I'll begin with the morning of November 2nd in 2017. My wife remembers that morning, me reaching my hand out towards hers while we were on our bed. And just, she remembers me lingering there like longer than usual that morning. She remembers making a mug of coffee and passing it off to me, and standing in the doorway and watching me slide off the at that point, jump because I was spry, I guess. Anyhow, I moved off my porch and into my truck, and I headed off to work. My kid says that what he remembers about that morning was that I was going to come home early that day. See, I was a federal law enforcement officer, and I was working evenings at that time. And I had been called into a meeting that morning to help assess some traffic that we had in the area. And what that meant is that I was going to be able to come home early during the daylight hours and hang out with my kids. At that time, Zaya, my son, was learning to ride a bike, and I was doing the classic dad, teaching, running behind him and teaching him how to ride a bike. I had plans for that evening to come home and take my girls down to our little creek and make a fire and enjoy what we have here in Montana. So those are the memories of my wife and at least my boy for that day. The deal is I didn't come back, right? I didn't come back home that day. Quite literally, I did not come back to that house ever again. But figuratively, I did not return to that place as the same person. 15 minutes after my wife waved goodbye from the doorway, I lost control of my truck on an icy highway. And after hitting a ditch, I flipped 3 times. I'm told that my service weapon and holster caused a seatbelt malfunction. And that caused me to be ejected out of my window about 100 feet. The result, among multiple other physical issues, was paraplegia. So I became aware of all of this 4 days later in a hospital bed, coming in and out of consciousness and being under the influence of some heavy drugs. It was like a dosed titration into like this new dreamlike reality. I was distracted enough by the pain of cracked ribs and a shattered wrist and some organ damage to not really pay too much attention to what I couldn't feel. And it came around to me that what I couldn't feel was half of my body from my waist down. That all really didn't sink in until we had that cliche conversation with a neurodoc who said I'd never walk again. I mention all of this stuff to you today, not for your pity, for sure. But it's to make you aware of the reality of spinal cord injury and how quickly it all happens, and that it is no respecter of persons. My story could be your story, and I'm certain that we are alike in many ways. I mean, an obvious one is a draw to public service and honorable duty. It's just that day, physics ramped up its game against me. And this game that we play against gravity and acceleration and inertia makes spinal cord injury an open enrollment club. The general public is susceptible to the problem, and therefore it is appropriate that the general public help find a solution. This is one of the main points I want to bring to you today to consider. The problems of SCI, spinal cord injury, are problems worth solving. I'm coming to you as the voice of a community that can't breathe or hug their kids or control their core temperature or their bowel movements or their bladders. They may never experience an orgasm again or the feeling of sand between their toes. They're bearing the burden of bodies on fire with neuropathic pain. And all of this, in most cases, is through no fault of their own. Basic bodily functions lost because they chose to fill a bird feeder or ride a mountain bike or play in the surf or drive to work. This program is important and effective. From David Darrow's implantable e-stem to Mohammed Biden's stem cell work, humans are recovering lost function. Predictable funding is what's keeping these projects going. And when it's done, and you don't have to worry about the day when physics bests your spine because we can fix it, then, and please defund and then fix the next thing. The impact of the work being done in Minnesota is felt far beyond your state. And I realize it's coming out of your budget, but those dollars are leveraging hope to people like myself in states that don't have infrastructure or don't have the high caliber research institutions that you do. Be proud of what Minnesota is doing and the reputation that you've established, and continue this work. Please use these positions of influence to make the right decision when that time comes. Don't allow this program to be defunded for me, for the current community, for the researchers and the students who are doing the work, for everyone who is susceptible to losing that match with physics. Thank you guys so much for your time. Thanks for letting me have a voice.
Thank you very much, Jason. Very powerful testimony, and we wish you all the best. And hopefully this research can get you back to the point where you can actually start using your legs again. And that's the whole idea here. So we appreciate hearing from you. Matthew, are you online here?
I am. Yes.
Go ahead. Just say your name for the record, and then go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Senator Tomassoni and committee members. My name is Matthew Rarick. I live here in Minneapolis. I'm father to a son with a spinal cord injury 12 years ago, quadriplegic injury, very similar to Jack Jablonski's, actually, and that's why I'm here. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Isabel. All excellent testimony. I'll just give you a kind of brief, little more detail maybe. So I'm one of the original architects of this initiative, all the way back to when Senator Jeff Hayden, or formerly Senator Jeff Hayden, was Representative Hayden, was when I first brought this to him. And took a few years of work, a lot of learnings on my part, not being familiar with the process, not being a lobbyist, but we did a lot of organizing back then, and we did a lot of homework. And a few of the things that of that homework that I believe led to this successful initiative that these folks are talking about and that you're considering today came from those years of refinement, but also a lot of investigation of other states that had done this in the past. A number of states, mostly on the East Coast, had done this in the 1990s. And it was from their experiences that I learned quite a bit about how to make this program work. And I won't focus on all of it, but one that's really important, and I think in many ways Jason sort of breathed into his testimony, is that this is a people's program. And one of the reasons why it's been so successful is that people from the community that's injured, people with traumatic brain injury, their family members, people who have spinal cord injuries and their family members are a part of this advisory council. One of the questions raised in the governor's change message was that higher education lacks the expertise to do this. The higher education office is really a pass-through entity. The expertise comes from the advisory council, people like Isabel Scarisbrick and many others who are experts in their field of research science, also experts in clinical practice, people who treat these injuries, and then experts like people like me, a parent, a person like Jason, people who live with the injury and have the expertise of living with the injury, are all at the table making decisions about what should be funded and why it should be funded. And to be honest with you, I really believe that this program, and this is maybe an important distinction, this program is really driven by us in the community. We are the catalyst for it. We are the shepherds of it. We are the ones who hold it accountable, because at the end of the day, we want what science should deliver, and that's an unmet human need. We're not interested in funding science for the sake of science, but for actually transforming treatment innovations to restore functions for people who live with this injury, like you've heard. That's the key element that is breathed into this statute, and it's breathed into this program, and why it's been successful. And then the last thing I'll tell you is it's been mentioned, but you should know very specifically, this program in Minnesota has catalyzed the passage of 3 other bills, Washington State, Ohio, Pennsylvania, all modeled after what happened in Minnesota. In some cases, the language in Ohio and Pennsylvania was adopted almost verbatim to pass those bills. And then lastly, just so you know, I don't want to get up some sort of state hackles and competitive hackles, but Tony Evers just put $3 million in his state higher education budget for spinal cord injury research. And the statute is, again, almost verbatim off the Minnesota bill. We hope to be introducing 2 more bills in Colorado and Texas. We've been meeting with legislators there and are close to having authors and introduction. And again, the standard that we use is the model in Minnesota because it's working and has been successful. I hope that you recognize the reality of this has put Minnesota on the map, and this has accelerated advances in the field of spinal cord injury research, such that if you combine SCN TBI, there are over 100 people who've had interventions as a result of people living with the injury have had interventions that have restored function for people living with these injuries as a result, direct result of this programming. I would say that's successful. It may not be 100% mission aligned, but I'd say it's very much mission aligned in terms of especially what Isabel told you. But as Karen Housley said, Senator Housley, you said this is working. It's actually a program that is working. And I appreciate your recommendation that that government program that is working exactly as it was intended should be rewarded, not defunded. So I thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. And thank you for the opportunity to give this testimony. And I certainly hope that you will consider keeping this program alive.
Thank you, Matthew. That was very, very good. And just from the standpoint of other states cloning the Minnesota statute is a compliment in itself, but the fact of the matter is that there's something going on here that's working. And when we have people testifying from New York and Montana, and you have Jack Jablonski, who is from Minnesota, who lives in California, I believe he graduated from USC, if I'm not mistaken. And so we have this spread out all over the country, and this is a program that is definitely worth continuing. So with that, I would just ask any members of the committee if you have any comments or questions. Okay, seeing none, Senator Housley, would you like to make some final comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Was there not another testifier?
I'm sorry, yes, there was another testifier. Rod is apparently having technical problems and
Okay.
is not able to get online here. But I think if he's listening, what I would like him to do is just to submit some written testimony, and then we'll submit it into the record.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank our testifiers. I've had Mr. Rarick here before at the Capitol. We had a press conference when we announced the bill, but Tammy Parker-Song and Jason Stauffer, wow, that was like, I got all teared up and I got chills, and I was so moved by your stories, and Tammy's so beautifully written. I was like, how is she going to pull this wheelchair? Not seeing wheelchairs in New York. I was going to say, Senator Tomassoni, did you tell her this wasn't about funding wheelchairs in New York? But yeah, how you pulled that around, just beautiful. And Jason, beautiful country you're in there. I love the backdrop, and thank you for that story. And hopefully we can continue to fund this research, because it is so important around the country, as you heard, and all of the states that are emulating what we're doing here in Minnesota, and so important to the communities around the world. So thank you to the testifiers. When this bill goes to the next stop, I want all of you back again, and then we'll have Rob too. But it is so important. And so, Mr. Chair, I'm hoping that this committee will pass it and move it along to HHS so we can keep it going. So thank you.
Okay, Senator Housley, and I want you to know that I haven't had any conversations with Tammy or Jason before. So we communicated only by email. So the fact of the matter is that they knocked it out of the park. And thank you for volunteering to be here, because your testimony was very powerful. So Senator Rarick moves that Senate File 1418 be recommended to pass and be re-referred to the Committee on Human Services Reform. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is adopted. Thank you.
And Mr.
Senator.
Chair, I forgot to thank Isabel too. I meant to thank Isabel because she's the brains behind this, besides Matthew. So thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you all for the opportunity.
Thank you for being here. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. We will move on to the next bill, Senator Rarick, Senate File 1306.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. And Senate File 1306 is looking to help a small sector of our youth who don't have the advantages that so many others have. And these are our youth that are in foster care. And you may ask, why this bill is coming forward. And one of the statistics that jumped out at me when I agreed to author this is that just 2% of youth that are in foster care were able to complete a 2-year degree by age 21, compared to their peers that 60% complete a 4-year degree by that age. And when you hear that staggering statistic, you might again ask, why is that? And I think it's something that many take for granted, but it's simply put, it's family. And, families support each other. Parents help their children navigate to whether to get to school or to get into a career. And unfortunately, youth that's in foster care, when they turn 18, too many times they're left on their own to navigate this path. And is this bill going to answer all of that? No, it will not, but it will help. It will help a little bit to streamline the process for these youth to be able to get into post-secondary education. It streamlines some granting processes and with the FAFSA. And I will let some of our testifiers explain it more. But I guess I almost forgot, Mr. Chair, we do have, and I believe it's the A1 amendment.
And this is a delete all amendment, Senator Rarick, and this puts it in the shape that you as the author would like it to be in. And so members, Senator Rarick moves the A1 amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
This motion is adopted. Okay, Senator Rarick, you want to move on to your testifiers? Is that what you'd like to do?
That would be great, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Chairman, okay, Christian Crump, would you please identify yourself for the record and then go ahead with your testimony.
Hi, so my name is Christian Crump. First, I would like to say, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for giving me a chance to speak before you today. I am a foster and was adopted at the age of 16. I attend Minnesota State University of Moorhead, where I am double majoring in physical education and health with a minor in coaching. I want to be a teacher and a football coach because I had a great caring PE teacher and a great social worker while I was going to Wheaton High School. Upon graduation, I will be the first person in my biological family and third person in my adoptive family to receive a 4-year degree. Despite everything I've been through, I know that I've been very lucky. I have support from my adoptive mom, who's a guardian ad litem. This meant she was very connected with the system and knew how to get me signed up for ETV and many other scholarships. So I have very little debt right now concerning school. So because of this support, I'm pursuing the college path that I want, and I didn't have to delay my dreams because of finances. I was given this opportunity because I lucked out and won the lottery. I got placed in foster care and was later adopted by some pretty amazing parents. A lot of other kids out there never got or will ever get the same chance that I did. I believe that it shouldn't be a question for fosters on if they can go to college or not. Finances, in my opinion, should be available in the application process, simplified so that fosters who don't have a mom like I did, who was a guardian ad litem, and was ready to move mountains for me to get to college, still have the same access I had for financial support for college. I don't honestly know if I would have gone to college if I was never put in foster care in middle school and if my adoptive mom wasn't in my life. It is not lost on me how much luck and random circumstance played in my journey. My story could be much different if just one thing didn't go right. So I support the Fostering Higher Education Act, SF 1306, because I believe that every foster deserves the same chance I got. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Christian? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Ayan Ali. Are you here?
Mr. Chair, unfortunately, she was not able to make it.
Okay, all right. Then how about Abigail? There you are.
Yes.
Okay,
Hello,
Abigail, just say your name for the record and then go ahead with your testimony.
Okay. My name is Abigail Hackbarth, or Widmark. I go by either. Hello, Senators. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak before you today. My name is Abigail Hackbarth, but most people call me Abby. I am 19 years old and I am in extended foster care. I am here to lend my voice and support to the Fostering Higher Education Act, also known as the SF 1306. I support the movement to provide more affordable education to children who are placed into the foster care system. My foster care process started when I was 12 years old, as I was in and out of hospitals due to the abuse I endured at the hands of my biological mother and stepfather. During this time, I was forced to miss several long periods of middle and high school, resulting in a disrupted and deeply challenging school experience that made it difficult to catch up and keep my grades high. Despite all of this, school was a refuge, a place where I could just be Abby. I was able to read as much as I wanted, do Sudoku, and be a nerd. I finally entered foster care when I was 16 and worked hard to graduate. However, I only had a 2.5 GPA at my graduation from Das Coqueto High School due to all the school I missed in my 9th and 10th year, even though I was a straight-A student my junior and senior year. Like an ambitious senior, I applied to and was accepted at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, NDSU, and SCSU. I was set to go to the U of M, however, after calculating the tuition and cost of room and board, even with the help of financial aid and scholarships, I realized I couldn't afford it. I was short $3,200 per year. I didn't have a parent who was saving for my college, nor did I have a parent who was willing to co-sign a loan, and being on my own, I felt I would drown if I went into debt with no one to help. Despite this, I never gave up on my dream of going to college. I applied to and went to Ridgewater Community College. I figured I'd be able to save up, and once I finished an associate's degree in liberal arts, I could afford. Thankful for this opportunity. It certainly wasn't what I had planned from the start. When I turned 18, my foster parents stopped getting state support for caring for me. I was in extended foster care, but this only paid for a third of what they had gotten accustomed to getting. I had a place to live. I am now living on my own, having to work 30 to 40 hours a week. As a result, I am only able to successfully complete 3 courses per semester. After talking with my advisor, I decided to change my career path to become a flight attendant so that I can get into the workforce sooner. This was just a long way of saying I have had to alter my plans many times to accommodate for my financial struggle. While I am still extremely excited to be a flight attendant and see the world, I would have loved to follow my original plan to be a teacher. I know I'm not the only child in foster care who has had to change their plans as a result of major setbacks. I'm also aware that we cannot get rid of all of life's challenges foster kids face, but to allow them the same opportunities that other kids have only seems fair. Many of my friends receive help from their families, a support system most foster kids lack. We do not have someone to turn to during school breaks when we need a place to stay or to pay for college. We instead must apply for hundreds of scholarships and work overtime to even dream of attending school. Too often, for most foster kids, this is too much of a hurdle, which turns them away from further education outside of high school. I got lucky. I'm getting a chance to go to Ridgewater part-time, and I'm grateful to be a home health care aide. But it shouldn't come down to luck. I did everything right. Shouldn't the foster system do right? To vote in support of the Fostering Higher Education Act, SF 1306. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments? Thank you, Abigail. Wong Murphy, just say your name for the record.
Thank you.
Go ahead with your testimony.
Hi, my name is Hong Murphy. Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee, I am the founder and executive director of a nonprofit called Foster Advocates, and we work with people who have experienced foster care. And you were just able to hear from 2 of the wonderful fosters that we get to work with. They spoke to very personal aspects of what it means to be in the foster care system and trying to attend college. The challenges of foster care are significant. We don't have to, imagine greatly to even think about what those might be. But those challenges are even greater when they turn 18, when they turn 21, when they age out of the foster care system, and they must engage with the world alone. And I'm not sure what other families have done, because I don't have that experience. But I can't imagine that if you have children of your own, that parents just stop caring for the kids just because they turned 18 or because they turned 21. What I'm told is that parents stick by their kids no matter what and help them in any ways that they possibly can. And that's ultimately what this bill is seeking to do. Now, I know that it is not unique for young people to worry about the cost of college, but it is unique, the circumstances that foster youth face. They are significant. The barriers are not, start from entry into foster care, where your school is disrupted almost immediately. The odds that you are able to stay in the school that you were at before care versus now is very low. The average foster in the state of Minnesota moves 5 times during their experience in care, and often have to attend more than 3 school districts as a part of that moving process. They're more likely to face expulsion, more likely to get bad grades, and more likely to just be disconnected from a caring adult. School is a refuge, as Abby said, a place where you can meet a caring adult and be connected with the rest of the world. College provides the same lifeline. A CTE program provides the same link. A high-skill apprenticeship provides that same opportunity and network that you would not have a social anchor if you didn't have those other things due to not having family access. Now, Senator Rarick spoke eloquently about the challenges that fosters face. Only 2% of fosters get a 2-year degree by the time that they're 21 years old. 2%. I really want us to sit with that for a second. Some people have better odds of winning the lottery than a foster is likely to get any type of degree at all. That is something that is horrendous. These are our children. They became ours when we separated them from their families, and we owe them that same duty of care to step in and provide for them as any other family would, in all the ways that we can possibly do that. If a family could afford to make sure that their kid goes to college, I'm certain that they would provide that. The state is able, and that's what we're asking. But this is not just a win for fosters. It would not just benefit them. It would benefit the entire state of Minnesota. Right now, we are leaving millions and millions of dollars on the table. 86 million, just based on the current projections of the federal and state aid that we are not maximizing because so few fosters end up in our schools. By correcting that and braiding these support systems, while also providing a small grant to cover the remaining costs, will allow us to not only deeply fund our college systems with these additional dollars, increase enrollment at schools who are facing enrollment challenges in the near future, but also would allow us to get a net gain. For every foster that is going to college is one foster less likely to enter any involuntary government system. But also, frankly, I would love to adopt someday, and I would love to adopt an older youth. But knowing that often the way that we pay for college is the second the kid is born, we open up a 529 plan. That's not possible when you're adopting a 16-year-old. But that doesn't mean that people shouldn't and that people don't want to. This would allow folks to have a financial burden lifted off so that they can pursue adding members of their family and creating a system that allows kids to not be alone or be under state care for the rest of their lives. And for all those reasons, I am encouraging and hoping all of you are able to support the Fostering Higher Education Act today. And I am ready to answer any questions, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. What motivated you to be the founder of Foster Advocates?
Honestly, it was because I was in foster care. I was adopted when I was 11 years old in Ada. Some of you might have heard of Ada, although not many people do. I'm lucky enough now to be able to be on my own, but this is a story that wasn't possible for the other members of my family. My brother aged out of foster care, and for him, the circumstances of his life were quite literally opposite to mine. 6 months after graduating from high school, he was sleeping in a car. I was at Syracuse, and that's where we saw our paths diverge. And often people think that I started this nonprofit because of my brother, to help him. I didn't. I know it's too late for him. He's now 28 years old, and this program would not benefit him. He's had to make really difficult and sometimes bad choices in his life. But we could intervene much sooner, because it's not too late for all the fosters in our state right now. And that's why I do this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll move on to Paul Cervenik. Paul, just identify yourself for the record.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I'm Paul Cervenik. I'm the president of the Minnesota Private College Council. I want the committee members to know that we think this is a really great bill. And I want to thank the bill authors, Senator Rarick and the House author and the Foster Advocates Organization for working with us to include foster students who are enrolled at our institutions or who may want to enroll at our institutions to be included in their proposal on the same basis as students who are enrolled at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities campus. This is the basic principle that's embedded in the Minnesota State Grant Program. And we want students to have the opportunity in the same way as the State Grant Program provides to enroll in our institutions if that's a good choice for them. I also want to express our general support for the concept in the bill as amended. We appreciate that the authors have worked with us, and we want to just indicate our interest in continuing to work with the authors and Foster's advocates and the committee staff in the Office of Higher Education to make sure that the specific language in the bill works for our institutions, which are different from the public institutions. That's all I want to contribute to this conversation, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? So did the amended language work for you?
The amended language embodies the concept that works for us. Our financial aid people have given us feedback about improvements to the language that are, I think, what I would call refinements that will ensure that there are not questions or confusions about how it works at our institutions. And so I've had good conversations with Mr. Murphy, and we want to continue to perfect the language.
Okay, Senator Goggin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was going to just ask, does this line up with the federal and other state programs? You know, how does this all kind of intertwine together, I guess, so we make sure it works and it's not overly burdensome or anything?
Is that a question for Mr. Cervenik, the author, or for council?
If Mr. Cervenik can answer it, otherwise I'd probably ask council for that answer.
Mr. Cervenik.
Mr. Chair, members, the way I understand the bill, a foster is going to have access to all of the existing state and federal grant programs, but in many cases there is a gap. The remaining, and that's what you heard from these students, that is a barrier to them enrolling or staying in college. This grant will help close that gap, and it builds on top of all of the existing programs, Mr. Chair and Senator Goggin. So I think it's well designed in that way, that it takes advantage of everything that's already available, but recognizes for these students a gap exists that there is no parent or other support system to close.
Mr. Murphy, did you want to contribute to that question?
Thank you. Yeah, I think, you know, Paul got right. This is something that is just in two parts. It's looking to braid the current system. So right now, fosters would have to apply for the FAFSA, apply for college, and apply for ETV funding, apply for the state grant, apply for the American Indian Scholarship, apply for, you know, various other things that make it really, really hard to apply for college if you're just a regular 18-year-old with a regular family. Now imagine you don't have any family to help you apply. You don't have any family to put pressure on the guidance counselor to even help you. You usually give up at that point. You know, very few folks then are able to make that leap to college, even if they do get accepted, because then they can't take advantage of all the opportunities that that they didn't know about. What this allows is the one benefit of foster care is that the government knows all of your business. They're your parent. And so they already have all of your information. By applying for the FAFSA, they have all of your data that is relevant for all these other scholarship programs. And what that would allow a foster to do is apply for the FAFSA, apply to college, and then the Office of Higher Ed would then be able to, you know, just see all the relevant programs that they are qualified for and immediately just update all those. And then they would be in communication with the college to let them know, hey, this is the amount of aid For the majority of young people, especially at our 2-year and tribal colleges and any high skill CTE or apprenticeship program, the current existing structure of funding will cover everything. It is the 4-year colleges in some of the narrow circumstances that there will be a small grant that then will be awarded afterward. That is the second provision, which is the Fostering Higher Education Scholarship Program. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. White, is there anything to add to that?
Mr. Chair and members, I think they covered it, unless there's other questions.
Senator Goggin, did you have a follow-up?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much. Appreciate the answers.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Members, there's also in your packet a letter of support from Minnesota State from the Chancellor, Mahalcha. So please take a look at that when you get a chance. And Senator Rarick, seeing no other comments from committee members, do you wish to make any final comments?
Just thank you, Mr. Chair, for hearing the bill, and I hope that the committee can work together and find a way to include this in our final bill.
Okay. Last chance, members. Okay. Seeing no further comments, we will lay Senate File 1306 as amended. We'll lay it over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. And not seeing any further comments from anybody. Members, have a great weekend and meeting adjourned.